live. Get your fingers ready and tippy tap with me and Mark during the show, because we want to be able to answer your questions, and no doubt you'll have gems to contribute. So please do talk to us during the show. We love to be in conversation with the audience. And if you're watching on the replay, also reach out to me and Mark anytime. Just DM us on LinkedIn. If you're not already connected to us, it'll be harder to DM us, so connect with us, then DM. Please think of us as your friends, your community. We are here to help. Mark and I were just reflecting on the fact that neither one of us seem to ever tire of talking about and working with people on AI stuff, particularly around AI governance. So please think of us as your go-to people if you're watching the replay. And in the beginning, I'm just kind of double checking that we are live in the various places that we're supposed to be live. So folks, if you are here, let me check my chat. Drop a chat if you're here and let us know. And just for a little bit of orientation, you have me and Mark here, but we also have Don. Here we are live. Okay, good. We also have Don Wackerly, who's our Vice President for Strategic Partnerships at the AI Empowered Fundraiser Group. He is in the chat dropping links and answering questions. So feel free anytime if you have a question to drop it in there. If I miss it, Donnie will grab it and will remind me. He's texting me right now to tell me, yes, indeed, we are live. Great. All right. So we've got people coming in. Welcome again, everybody. As you come in, make sure that your fingers are working. You could just like wave them around. You could take them out of your pockets. If you're wearing mittens, you could take them off so you can use your fingers and tippy tappy and be in touch with me and Mark. So you're in the right place. This is, again, the AI Empowered Fundraiser Show. We made ourselves a show, everybody. We're not just like a webinar or a workshop. We're now a show because we said so. And soon we're going to have fancy show notes and everything like that, because our friend Arias from the AI Exchange is doing automations for us. So right now, Donnie's going to drop in the chat a website where you can go to get the recording, any resources that Mark and I dropped for you today. And eventually we will move that into a whole show page where you'll be able to access all of our previous live episodes with the decks, with, prompts, resources, whatever your heart desires from our show will all be available to you over there on our show page soon. As a reminder, we go live on Thursdays and we talk about AI governance right now. That's like our theme for the foreseeable future. That is our theme because it is so incredibly important. And hi, Kate. Oh, good. Kate's here. Donnie's here. Wonderful. Let's see. And on Fridays, we do hands-on training. So I am super, super motivated for all of you to know how to actually use the tools that we're going to be talking about, and that you hear everybody yapping about and all the thought leaders talking about and all the news about the boards of the various tech companies, et cetera, et cetera. My goal is for you to be able to actually use those tools. So on Fridays, we do use cases. And what we're doing tomorrow, which is June 28th, tomorrow we're doing building your annual plan. So for those of you who are fundraisers we're probably in the same boat where FY25 is right around the corner. You're working hard on your annual plans. Most of us can make an annual plan very, very complicated, or maybe our organization's systems and processes make them complicated. I'm going to teach you how to streamline all of that stuff using generative AI so that you're not overthinking it. You're not like overfitting your annual plan, because let's be honest, we are humans and a lot is going to change in the next 24, 48 months where we're writing our plan, working toward. So we're going to write an annual plan that doesn't back us into a corner and doesn't require us to spend so much of our precious brain calories on writing a plan. We can focus on actually doing the things. Okay, so with all of that said, Donnie has dropped into the chat a link where you guys can go and grab the previous episodes. And then also for those of you who are here and have this, see this little QR code in the upper, I think it's upper left. I have to do this. I don't know. There's something, I don't know why. I'm 50 years old, but I can't tell my right from my left anymore. Anyway, it's this side. This is my donor thank you note, GPT. And if you take a picture of this or whatever, put your camera on it, you'll go to a Gumroad site where you can download or get a link to my GPT. And this is one of those things that most of you all have probably heard of. It's called a custom GPT. And now we have them on Claude, which is very, very exciting. They currently, up until now, have, I think, mostly been on, maybe mostly or only, I don't know. We've been building them on OpenAI, on the OpenAI ecosystem. And this will enable you to write a really, really sweet, lovely, wonderful, hyper-personalized thank you note. It's trained on the voice of a senior development officer. So it's lovely the way fundraisers talk to donors. And you can include a quote if you want to. It will default to Maya Angelou if you do want a quote and you don't have the name of a poet to suggest. And you won't have to spend, like, again, so many brain calories working on custom thank you notes, which for those of you all who are fundraisers in the audience know that, like, we could live a very long and happy life without ever writing another thank you note and it would be perfectly fine. So anyway, I want to introduce you. I want to talk to you a little bit about my friend Mark here because I'm super happy to have him on the show. Mark and I met in a community called the AI Exchange. The AI Exchange is a really great resource for those of you who are beginning to wonder, like, how do I learn more? How do I get more serious about this? If you're thinking about pivoting in your career to focus on helping people and organizations and companies with their own AI work, the AI Exchange is a good place to be. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to lead AI stuff in your organization, the AI Exchange is a good place for you. If you're looking for collaborators, also a good place to find them. So, and if you want to take coursework, Rachel Woods, who runs the AI Exchange, is always, she has her finger on the pulse of what's going on in our industry and offers courses like at the perfect time that we all need them. Rachel is there first. So it's a really good place to go. So he and I met chatting in the AI Exchange and got to know one another and had a general sense that we're both, I'm going to say some things that I think we have in common, Mark, and you can push back on them, but, like, we're both really enthusiastic about AI and the impact that it can have on productivity and society and business, the economy, and our own personal lives when used ethically. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about that until the cows come home. And we're like, here now, we've shifted to spend tons of our bandwidth on working with organizations to help them implement AI responsibly. Mm-hmm. Mark is also hilarious. And that makes it even more fun. Like, a lot of people in AI actually are kind of quirky and interesting. I mean, I was surprised to learn, but Mark has a, like, really dry sense of humor, and I kind of do too. So that's been really fun. And we're both really into, oh, hey, Greg, I'm so glad you're here. We're both super into continuous learning. So he and I meet up every other week with a couple of other really neat people and talk about the latest in AI governance, like what's going on, what are things that we need to be thinking about. And inevitably, every single week, I walk away with huge new topics that I need to go down a rabbit hole. Likewise. And learn more about. Mark has a fun fact about himself that he's going to share. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mark, to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your history with the game show industry.
Okay, you planted a fun fact about me. I was going to say, you mentioned you do trainings on Friday. Well, I'm actually in New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand, so right now while we're talking, it's 6:10 in the morning.
Thank you, by the way.
On Friday, the 28th of June, and so that's why I love AI. It's easy for me because I live in your future, so I am 24 hours ahead of you and bringing the future to you live. And then, yes, I guess fun fact: when I was about 21 years old, I won a game show with one of my best mates, which was that game show was subsequently voted the worst game show in New Zealand that year. So that was that little moment of fame. We were doing handshakes in the street and kissing babies for about 3 months, and then it all faded, and here I am back in the land of the little people.
What did you have to do on the game show?
It was like the demographic they were going for was crazy, wacky, buzzer type game show. And if you beat the hosts, doing ridiculous general knowledge questions, then you won the prizes. So yeah, it was. I can't even begin to explain what it was, but it was fun as a 21-year-old. And we also, in the green room before the show, they gave us free pizza and beer, and we really maxed out our free beer allowance. So by the time we kind of sobered up halfway through the show, we were winning, and then we just kind of going with it.
That's a good technique for them to serve you booze in the green room.
I've done the same before this show, actually. I've been up since 5
Are you still drunk from the night before, or did you wake up early to start?
No, I got up especially. I like to prepare for shows like that.
Perfect. That's exactly, I think that might have been in our instructions actually to the guests is yes. Please do at least 6 or 7 shots before you come on the show.
Exactly. Yep.
So how about tell us what you really do? What are you up to in 10 past tomorrow, and how are you working with organizations on AI governance, that part? And then tell me, what does AI governance mean to you? And I dropped the same question for folks in the chat. So talk to us about what you're up to, and then try to lay some groundwork for us about what is AI governance to you.
I'll try and skip to the second part as quick as I can, because people don't need a full sales pitch, but it's essentially 10 past tomorrow is a full service AI consultancy, right? So touching every strata of a client organization, everything from what I call the tactical side of AI, which is helping every single person in the organization, because I believe AI is for everybody. It's not for certain departments, but helping every single person in the organization to raise their AI literacy and understanding, and then raise their skill sets and how do they use powerful off-the-shelf tools to dramatically raise their productivity and efficiency levels. So that's at the tactical level. And then at the strategic level, it's working with senior leadership teams and boards of directors to help them understand this is where we start to touch on what we're doing today, but to understand the strategic implications of, we actually pull out, dust off the strat plan for the next 24 months and pull out what are the strategic objectives and what's the strategic plan of the company, and then overlay that with where is it likely that the technology, where is it now, and where is AI going in the next couple of years, and those intersections between the strat plan and the technology, those are either like really strong strategic opportunities for the business to evolve with AI, or they are often very strong threats to the business model from AI as well. And then in between, we build some custom automations for organizational efficiency as well. So So that's what it does. I'm intentionally kind of horizontal rather than vertical, just by nature, my personal nature. I like to be a generalist rather than niche down, and so helping organizations from all industries, but also particularly try and stay away from large enterprise-sized clients, because I just don't believe that they are organizationally set up to be nimble enough to respond to the pace that this technology is requiring. So that is that is a bit of 10 past tomorrow. And like, what does governance mean to me? Governance starts with one of the things I say in the tactical implementation of AI in that training is like, AI is for everybody. It has such a breadth of use cases and also like forms of intelligence that it can represent, that it can literally touch the roles of everybody in an organization. And so therefore, when you say, like, from a skills point of view, in terms of driving efficiency and productivity, if we accept that it is for everybody, then also like the ethics and responsibility of how do we govern this technology? How do we be responsible, ethical, moral users of AI? Yes, it is for strategic leaders and boards of governance, particularly, but it's also for everybody in the organization to understand these principles at a high level view as well. So, you know, how do we safeguard our data? How do we safeguard our privacy, the privacy of our own IP within our organization, as well as the IP of our clients and suppliers and stakeholders? And that's at a very base level, right? That's governance. How do we make sure that we all understand the concerns about AI within the organization? How do we recognize that, like, to have a responsible conversation about AI and realize that this is not all, we're not heading towards utopia. It's not going to be rainbows and lollipops and universal basic income for everyone, which will make us rich. Like, there are real concerns around bias, ethical responsibilities, the sustainability side of AI and what it means for our environment. How do we talk openly about our use of AI to our external stakeholders? Well, to me, all of those type of factors are like what we're talking about when we talk about AI governance.
Yeah. I like what Greg shared here. It's AI governance is, for me, the gas pedal, the steering wheel, and the brakes, and maybe a couple of guardrails, because right now there's no speed limit, helmet, or seatbelt laws yet. It's AI anarchy right now. Yeah, I love that analogy totally, because it's like, so one of the things I said early on was like, you can't steer a parked car. So like, using the kind of automobile analogy, like, you can't steer a parked car, but now on the other hand, as soon as the car starts going like half a mile an hour, now you do need some rules of the road, like some guidance, some guardrails. You probably do need a helmet sooner rather than later. And that is where, and to your point, Mark, it's not just going to be, rainbows and world peace and all the whales are saved. Definitely. But on the other hand, nor can we live in a space of like total stick our heads in the sand, scarcity mindset, managing against the worst case scenario. Some people can and should, and we hope that they do manage against the very, very worst case scenarios. But that's a big, big conversation that needs to take place. That is, I will happily say that one is above my pay grade. So, a couple of the things that you touched on that I have been thinking about a lot. One is how, you think, if we think of ourselves as generalists, because AI is a generalist's world. This is like they say, the revenge of the liberal arts majors. A lot of us have like deep, that T-shaped kind of expertise, right? Where we're generalists across and we're kind of like this. And then we've got this really deep, STEM where there's some area where we've got a lot of expertise.
Mm.
And we see that in our organizations too, where there are some units that are taking to AI faster than others.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've really been kind of, as we think about change management, really been noodling on is how do we not let the center of gravity be, in our case, typically what I'm seeing is it's going to be IT and IS, which gets the kind of ownership of AI governance. Often the other model seems to be executive leadership team.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the pockets of super users who, and so you've kind of got this like map, this constellation in an organization. How do you think about bringing the right people into the room for the conversations about the guardrails, the seatbelt, the helmet?
Mm-hmm. Personally, how do I do it?
Yeah.
With my clients, it is, so yes, quite often IT gets lumped with this responsibility, and this is going to be a general statement, so I apologize to any IT departments that I offend, but most are not actually set up for this requirement, and nor do they want it. It's quite a heavy responsibility to be suddenly charged with AI governance, right? And so I actually propose that AI governance sits in, as I said, the themes sit across the business. Everybody needs to be, in a way, they need to be governance of their own roles. But that's such a glib statement. So let's edit that out.
Well, all right, rewind the tape.
So really, like, yes, for me, I put the governance responsibility, I put the governance hats on the senior leadership team and the board of directors, right? And so it's fairly and squarely, it has to sit at senior leadership, because ultimately they are the ones who like legally and from a regulatory point of view, it does, the buck stops with them. But I think what you're alluding to is like, how do you support the internal engagement with principles like governance, AI governance? And so what I think you and I both do with our clients is we install this AI council within clients. And so an AI council is, depending on the size of an organization, but it might be between 6 and 10 people who, in their personal lives, they are passionate about and intrigued and curious about AI. And so it's likely that regardless of their professional role, and actually it's important to get people across different strata, like right down from your new intern who's still shiny and fresh out of the box, right through to your senior leaders. It's important to get people from across strata and across departments into this AI council. And now this is where things start to diverge. Like, what does an AI council do? I think you and I maybe both set them up slightly differently, but for me, their prime responsibility is just to monitor, because they're already scanning the world for what's happening in AI anyway, because they're personally interested. It's just to continue doing that monitoring. And I actually give my AI councils a variety of different newsletters, podcasts, LinkedIn people to follow, et cetera, who are excellent at commentating the world of AI for non-technical people. And so So within the AI Council, I typically encourage, they get shouted a beautiful breakfast every fortnight, a pre-work breakfast by their organization. And it's their responsibility to just come together and answer a few guiding questions that I give them. They work autonomously without me. But what's happening in the world of AI, and how does it apply to us in our organization and our people and our workflows and our processes? And always within that meeting, there are questions that they address around how does this affect our ability to do what we do with AI, like privately, to be responsible for our own data and to look after the data interests of our clients and our stakeholders. Talk about ways that they are seeing AI being used ethically and non-ethically and responsibly. And so I think if you, and obviously, with the work with the senior leadership teams, taking them on a deep dive into those aspects. And so when you have those two mechanisms kind of operating, and they are synced, because there always needs to be some executive sponsorship within that AI council, so that there's a direct link between the two, and that this entity has some teeth. And what this does is this is AI by the people for the people. And I just made that up on the fly, but that's what it is. And so that engenders this this enthusiasm and engagement internally within the company.
Yeah.
And spreads this warm spread of AI throughout the organization. And this is top down. And if you do those two things in parallel, then you have like a full organizational wide consideration for these themes.
Yeah. So it's about more than having the executive leadership sponsorship, but we can't really proceed with this in earnest without buy-in from the executive leadership team.
No, and it's an interesting, it's something that's quite interesting to watch sometimes, because when I do set up these councils with clients, I go and take part in the first three that they hold. And I say, you always have to have in your council, you have to have at least one person from the senior leadership team, but it's a democratic council, so a couple of them, they put their CEO on the AI council, and in the council, that person has an equal voice and no more and no less than the fresh new intern, right?
Yes.
But yes, it does give them a direct link to the senior leaders. How are you doing it, Anne? Like within your client companies, like how are you kind of diffusing the governance responsibility?
It's a really good question. So, one of the, well, I wanted to kind of, let me pick up on one of the pieces that you shared and bring that forward. So I love how AI becomes this like foil character for so many of the things that we've wanted to see in our organizations before, right? And now, like the existence of an AI council, given AI's role in our world right now, means that the CEO and the intern are on common ground. Like if we want to be honest with ourselves, the CEO in some ways is uniquely underqualified to comment on use cases.
Yes.
And the intern, of course, doesn't have visibility into some of the factors that the CEO would have. And then if you don't have the person who's got their, wake up in the morning every day thinking about risk management, if you don't have that person in, and then if you don't have the middle managers in, right? So we've had these like utopian ideas about, wouldn't it be great if we could all just work together? Right? Wouldn't it be neat if over time our organizational, charts, instead of looking like this, they looked a little bit more like this, or like little pods, right? And then all these things have happened where we've been like, oh, it's really cool. we have open floor plan offices. We can all talk to each other, or, oh, we're all working from home. We're all the same. We all have cat hair on our pants. Like but now we have this opportunity to really experiment. It's like a social experiment, but with really high stakes. And so what one of the kind of cues that I've taken from you is this piece of bringing it in at the executive leadership team level really early on, making sure that there's that buy-in, but also really amplifying the role, like the importance of the role for the people who are not in the C-suite. And so one of the things that I recommend is, as so many of the people who I work with are inside organizations that don't yet have a framework, right? And they're not even, like, the C-suite folks may or may not even be contemplating it. But I've got all these individuals who are actively using AI like crazy, but they are also like super socially aware human beings. And they're craving having rules, right? What's okay, what's not, right? And they're, watching all the webinars and following all the thought leaders and trying to piece together something. So when I keep telling, I have to tell everybody in the whole entire world that I got to do this talk affiliated with OpenAI and their nonprofit, initiatives. But we each got a question that was in our zone of genius. And the one that I got was about, how can individuals start using AI, and how do they do it in a way that's like, safe and secure? And so one of the things I recommend is that people begin reflecting on their own values and how those values bump up against some of the common pillars of AI governance, right? Like bias, for example, data security and privacy, explainability, continuous learning, et cetera. And I think of the example of, if you're just an individual user and you're in an organization and your job is to come up with a design for your newsletter, you could take one of, any approach in a continuum of, say you're like, you're working in DALL-E or Midjourney, and you're essentially asking for an image of Andy Warhol's, tomato soup painting, but you just want mushroom soup. So you could ask for that, and you're like, I think of like, you're that kind of a person. In the middle, there might be, hey, DALL-E, explain to me in excruciating detail Andy Warhol's style. Okay, what does that look like? Okay, can you make me a mushroom soup container that is like that? And then on the other end of the spectrum is, make me a mushroom soup container in pop art style. So you start thinking about, like, as your human being, individual self, where do you land on this? And how would that bump up against your organization's values and frameworks that you see floating around? A really good one is at fundraising.ai. We have the framework toward responsible AI in fundraising. And I know Donnie will drop the link. So that's a really long way of saying, Mark, that in some ways I'm starting from the champions, the users, starting with them and saying, hey, you may not feel like you have a ton of power, but when you've been using the tools for a little while, and you go through an exercise like this yourself, now you are ready to start talking to other people in your organization about it. Bring in your work besties, ask your boss if you can do a brown bag, start socializing that not only is AI out there, but we need to have some rules around it, just in case your executive leadership team hasn't taken this on yet, right? If you're sitting around, like, for those of you who are out there who are nonprofit, social sector staff, if you're not hearing things from your leadership, that's okay, right? We cannot wait for that to happen. You want to develop some of your own kind of personal code of ethics. Thank you, Donnie. And that said, though, what I have found is that when we can get the attention of the executive leadership team, which we do something, I really want to move in the direction of what you're doing. What we're doing now is we start with a two we do 2 segments of an executive leadership briefing. One is kind of AI landscape, right? Because a lot of folks are coming in, they really don't have the context. And the other is about a framework. What's it like to build a council? What it's like to build a framework? How could that work? So we get them to the point where they feel comfortable kind of calling some of the shots. The other thing, though, that I'm finding is that if we don't upskill the executive leadership team, they don't know how important it is for their staff to get training.
Yes. 100%.
Right? So how are you, in addition to the AI governance piece, also training those executive leadership teams?
Yeah, so in terms of, if you looked at it as a timeline, I actually, and let's say there's a 12-month program of work with client X. So I actually don't start the official AI governance work with the senior leadership teams until step kind of 2 or 3, right? Because step 1 is raise AI literacy and fundamental skills training for everyone across the organization.
Okay.
And that's about 10 hours of training to go from, I've never heard of AI. It's very rare to find someone like that. But from there, right through to after 10 hours, you're a highly competent user of off-the-shelf tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or a couple of tools that are maybe specific to your industry. It takes about 10 hours to go from absolute novice to highly competent. That you're doing your job 30% faster and better, right? And that in itself is phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
It's over that, right? 10 hours of training to get to that point. But there's no point. It's a very porous structure if you try and go straight to themes like governance when people don't have that fundamental understanding.
Right.
And skills, and the skills training is just as important. So that when I say it's for everybody, it's literally for everybody, including, and I'm like, sometimes senior leaders at the start, they're like, oh yeah, I'll just go and do that with everyone else, and then we'll be ready when you've trained them. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You need to roll up your sleeves and get in there in the trenches with everybody. You need to understand the same fundamental knowledge about these things. And that's the opportunity and the potential of AI, as well as the risks and the concerns and the challenges. And then you need to dive in and do this 10 hours of training, initial training, because then when you've seen how powerful the tools are and how malleable they are and how they literally can touch, and you'll experience and see it with your people, how it's going to touch every single one of their roles. Then you start to you watch the penny drop with these senior leaders. Oh man, this is actually, and at that point, that's when I drop the saying on them, which is, for me, AI is not a technical challenge in the technology. It's a cultural challenge, because the technology itself is so powerful. Everyone can adopt it. It radically changes what their work looks like. And so then actually, when you see that and experience that as a senior leader, then you get the tactile sensation of how it's changing your organization, or about to, right? And so at that stage, then it makes sense to start. Then actually it's kind of organic. Then the senior leadership team start to ask the right questions. They're like, okay, so how do we make sure that everybody has their privacy settings turned on? Like at a really basic, how do we make sure that we're not like relying on the individual user to turn these things on? How do we make sure that everybody understands these systems are inherently biased, and that we as the individual have to be scanning for that bias in the output? How do we first come up with like a robust AI usage policy, internally facing usage policy to say, this is when we use AI, this is when we don't as an organization. These are the tools we use, these are the tools we don't, these are the licenses we have to have, these are the workflows that lend themselves to AI, this is the stuff that we don't use AI for. You know, and then those types of questions only really start to come and be appreciated by the senior leadership team when they've done that fundamental raising of AI literacy and raising of skill sets as well. Yeah.
So step one is AI literacy, AI skills building for the executive leadership team before we start layering on kind of more, at the time, it would be more academic information about AI governance versus, to your point, they're having the experience of going like, was I supposed to turn on a privacy setting? And oh, wait a second, were the other, 1,300 employees also supposed to turn it on? And how would they know that? And, or was this by default turned on and I'm not sure why? And did it really need to be? And also those fundamental questions of like, should we even be using AI for XYZ thing?
Yeah, and the conversation just becomes more grounded in reality. Like the amount of times I'll go into a public talk and people come up to me afterwards and they say, actually, we should talk about this. The amount of people who are using it in secret because
we got to talk about it. Yes.
Locked it down and like ring fenced it. Where was my train of thought there?
That they come up to you and afterward and you find out that they have probably a level of naivete that is shocking.
Yeah, and that's right. And they say, my company just says we can't use it because like legal have said that they're worried about privacy, or IT have said they worry about privacy. And to me, that's the naivety of like, even senior leaders don't understand. It can actually be as simple as you buy the right tool, pay for the right subscription, and you press one button and everything is actually locked down. Now, I don't mean to minimize the conversation of like data privacy because it's bigger, but it can be that simple. And so that's the raising. If you raise the AI literacy and people understand simple points like that, then the conversation becomes grounded and people actually start to worry about the right things rather than literally sitting in senior leadership teams and someone will say, when's Terminator coming? The amount of times I have to answer that question of like,
when they say what? When, oh, the Terminator. Oh dear. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I just want to, I'm trying to like scan, I always try and scan what we're talking about and think what would need clarification for someone who's like listening to this from a really base level of understanding. The two things I've thought of are like, what does it mean to do skills training? I keep talking about that.
Yeah.
It's literally just like, how do you prompt these skills training is how do you prompt these systems from what often is a very average output to something that can feel like magic, right?
Yes.
And prompting is really, it's just how do you communicate with an AI in a like a best practice way. And there's just certain sometimes intuitive, sometimes non-intuitive formats that you can use to communicate with these tools. And so that, like, essentially, like your early training is just how do you prompt?
Yep.
Yeah. And then let's just put an asterisk on that of like talking about this occurred to me before when you said that there are people who are trying to get the attention of their exec team. And I think often a stat which really gets the attention of those higher up is there are surveys out there, like really strong, large surveys that suggest like up to 80% of your employees are using AI with their own personal accounts.
Exactly.
because the organization's locking it down, and these people don't want to miss it. They're getting it, like how powerful it is at helping them to do their jobs. So you can't lock them away from it. They just use their personal accounts, and unfortunately, that means that often because we haven't educated them,
yes,
they are using these tools in non-safe ways, unsafe ways, and they are putting company data and IP into it, using the free versions of tools, which is then exposing and raising the risk of the spread of that company data. I just when I was saying that, hopefully you can go back in the recording and turn all of times I say data into data for North American crew. But yeah, that's to me, like when you say that to senior leaders, that like grips them by the shoulders.
Yes.
Okay, if that's what's going on, we need to get involved here and make sure that we clarify that and rectify that.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Staff are driven to get their jobs done. And if you don't provide them with a tool to get their job done, they're going to find another way to get their job done. And here we are where you can't, like get to your coffee in the morning without hearing about a new AI tool. Even if you're not like in this super AI bubble like us, they're coming at us from everywhere. So people are going to be inherently, because they're especially like in my world with my clients, like the mantra about burnout is ever present. Like we all know burnout is at this like extreme crisis level. So folks have no choice but to look for ways to get their job done without spending more and more time. And sometimes AI is positioned very like very persuasively as just time savings, right? Imagine when you have employees who are using the tools just for saving time. That is when there's going to there for sure there are going to be they're going to be using the tools in ways that if you had a thoughtful process for having AI governance and you had enterprise-wide training, they themselves would know not to use it that way, right? What about, okay, so training is important. And to your point, like, what do we mean by skills building? In this case, oftentimes it's teaching people just how to interact with these things called frontier models. Usually we're teaching people on the big models that everybody hears about, usually ChatGPT, Anthropic. Those are the two really that everybody in my area uses. How about you guys?
Yeah, I have a couple of clients that are Google-based ecosystems, and so you're training them on Gemini.
Okay.
Yeah, mainly it's ChatGPT,
Okay.
OpenAI system or Gemini. Very few who like enterprise-wide are adopting Claude. Actually, I wish there were more. And then there's obviously like the Microsoft environment and people experimenting with Copilot and Copilot 365.
Yep.
But yes, those are the frontier models.
Yep. So a question for you. You and I, so my approach has been that you set up an AI council. Like I walk my people through what is an AI council, right? How do you set it up? All of the, the comms that need to take place in order to start scheduling, gatherings to have these conversations. And the thing that I've been doing is that the AI Council is the group that really tussles with what's our framework going to look like. You have a different approach where your AI Council is actually the group that focuses on adoption. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. I really kind of go out of my way to stress to the AI Council, this should not be an onerous responsibility for you. This should be fun. You get every couple of weeks, you get a beautiful breakfast shouted for you by the company. You come together, you talk about all the amazing things that you're seeing in AI, as well as the concerning things. And it's really about driving adoption and being able to like encourage adoption from your peers, from the inside out of a company. And like one of the examples there is one of the responsibilities I give the AI Council is, how do you organize activations and competitions to say, to draw out every month, there's a competition that's company-wide, show us your best use case of using AI in a workflow this month, or show us your funniest way that you've used AI this month, or show us the use case that saved you the most amount of time what was previously a manual process, right? And win $100 gift card, or win a massage for you and your spouse. What this does is it flips the dialogue from what we just talked about with, over here, you've got these organizations who are still putting their head in the sand and they're saying, no, you can't use AI. We're trying to set up the counterbalance to that, to say, not only can you use AI and we're training you on how to use it and educating you about it, but we're also celebrating the fact. And when you do that, you also get this cool mechanism of it's group learning. People get to see what their peers are doing and get inspiration from their peers about ways that they can use AI really powerfully. And so that's kind of where I tend to focus my councils, is on that let's really enjoy this experience of being on the council. Yes, let's take it seriously, because again, it's not all rainbows and lollipops. We have to also be cognizant of the risks and bring those into the conversation. But that's how that's the atmosphere that I try and give the council, because they're not being paid anymore to be on this council. It's a voluntary thing that they do around their core role. And so then that responsibility to build usage policies, build frameworks, be continually asking the hard questions and monitoring the framework that has been put in place around AI governance. For me, that falls on the senior leadership team and the board of directors. That's that's what you signed up for when you put on your big pants and became an executive. So I give them the heavy load, the ultimate responsibility.
So to recap, the senior leadership team does that hard work of grappling with what does our framework need to look like.
Yes,
right?
And I lead them through that, of course. So I don't just say that's your responsibility.
Right.
I lead them through that. Yeah.
So one question so Mark leads the executive leadership team through this process of identifying what their framework for responsible AI, something approximately called that, what that would look like. And they probably talk about some of the implementation plans and milestones and checks and balances and blah, blah, blah. And then this AI council, which is a more diverse group of stakeholders, they take that and go, okay, how are we going to make this a real thing in our company? And they come up with ways to enhance the likelihood of adoption and they do it in ways that actually help humans adopt things versus, some a company policy sitting on a website somewhere.
Correct.
How about the policing of a framework? How does that work?
To me, that sits at, when I talk about the heavy responsibility, that's the heavy responsibility. That sits with your senior leadership team. That sits with your board of directors. And so that is when I talk about a framework, that is saying, every month when they meet as a board of directors, it's asking the questions of the senior leaders who are like, okay, what's the update on? Has the list grown of the number of AI tools that we're using? If so, what is the updated list? And then column A, what are the privacy considerations of this tool?
Yes.
Have we bought the right licenses for this tool? Tick, 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 tick.
Yep.
Those kind of questions, do we have our new hires this month, have our new hires gone through the AI induction training? Tick. Et cetera, et cetera. That type of stuff, the policing and the monitoring sits, for me, in my model, it sits high up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about for you?
We haven't figured it out yet because we're still like in the middle of the process. We haven't had an organization yet that launched their framework, launched their AI governance, and enough time has gone by that we're now starting to look at, is it working? Is it sticking? Most of our clients are coming to us at that phase of, we're pretty darn sure that AI is here to stay and that we don't want to be a late adopter. We don't necessarily want to be the very, 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 very first, but we're ready now. We're ready to start having those conversations. And so we haven't had anyone go through the whole process with us yet.
Cool. I'm glad we're being honest there, because you've wheeled me out as like a guest specialist. So yeah, full disclosure and full honesty, which I think is like really needed in AI conversations.
Oh my God,
if you're listening to this conversation and you're thinking, oh man, our organization hasn't done a thing about AI governance, like, you are in the vast majority. And so if I'm like painting the picture, it's just because we're on social media, right? You have to make everything look awesome. But actually, yes, this is being made. We're like laying the path only 2 bricks ahead of where we're actually standing as we go. Like, yes, I'm doing this stuff with clients, but it is like we are the guinea pigs, and these clients are the guinea pigs of. This is the first generation of companies that's had to do this, so we're making it up on the fly. If your company is not doing it so far, yes, you need to be making moves towards doing it, but don't feel like you're being left behind by these like high-flying, forward-thinking companies. There's very few of them at the moment that are doing this, and we're all making it up as we go.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely, I binge all the content on AI governance, and I've changed my mind a couple of times about how this should be done, right? And then each client that goes through this process with me, there are learnings from that. And I think what puts people at an advantage is if they have a spirit of adventure. They're adventurous enough to say, we know we need to do this. We know this is evolving really fast. Let's get into this with somebody who knows at least a little bit more than us, like me, the me's and the you's of the world. We know enough to never claim to be the expert. Like, you and I both know that there are no experts, right? But that we're as close as you can get, right? When everything is evolving day to day like this, like you said, we're putting the bricks down, right? A couple bricks at a time in front of us, and we're racing to get those bricks down. But if an organization approaches this with a little bit of a spirit of adventure, knowing this is something that needs to be done, and there's no silver bullet right now, I think that's the frame of mind to be in. We have like zero seconds left, but I have one more thing I wanted to ask you about, which is, if somebody, and this, because I know that you and I, neither one of us need to like plug our efforts.
Mhm.
If somebody was going to try to endeavor to do this by themselves in their company or in their organization,
Mhm.
what would you suggest as like step 1, 2, and 3?
Step 1 is raise AI literacy. Step 2 is raise your skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Step 3 is make sure that AI is an openly encouraged and celebrated technology within the company. So it's not a dirty word. It's not
Mm.
something that people do in private with their own personal accounts. It's something that's out in the open. And if you can raise everybody up to the same level of understanding about the potential and opportunities as well as the risks and concerns,
Yeah.
then you can raise everyone up to having the same level of ability to use the tools. Then you can have really grounded conversations about how to do it ethically and responsibly. And
Right.
so maybe I like, and so like practically, how do you do that? You mentioned AI exchange at the start of our session. It's just this treasure trove of information, both structured, like the AI exchange
Mhm.
themselves, as you said, have very good content and courses on there. And then just within the forums, there are so many good, smart AI people in there
Yes.
to learn off as well, both in informal and formal ways. I'd say that's a really great place to start. Google actually has some excellent like generative AI courses. If you go on Coursera, there's an excellent course there called Generative AI for Everyone.
Mhm.
Those are the places that I'd start if you're going solo.
Yep. Same. I would recommend all those same things. And if the AI exchange isn't for you, know that I'm pretty convinced at this point, Mark, I've been paying attention to this a lot recently. I believe that the fastest, the best informed work in the AI like revolution is happening within communities. So we see a lot of stuff, we all listen to all the podcasts and follow all the thought leaders and blah, blah, blah. But if you go down a layer, like the practical operational advice I see happening and within different communities like the AI exchange. And there are several others that are really, really good. And people can always reach out to me. And we have one for women in AI called the incubator. But that's where the most actionable advice seems to be taking place so far right now. When I look around, I'm like, boy, I wouldn't want to do it by myself, but if I needed to, I would join a community and start learning from other people who are doing it right alongside me with a few other people who are they've got a few more bricks in front of them.
Yep.
So before we scoot, first of all, thank you for being here, especially so bright and early in the morning. And how can people learn more about you and 10 Past Tomorrow? How can they get a hold of you?
So I obviously have my website 10 Past Tomorrow. About halfway down the homepage there, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter where I always write like a thoughtful piece. I write a long form piece each week, and then just cover off some of the interesting things that I've observed in AI over the week. I'm obviously on LinkedIn, Mark Laurence at 10 Past Tomorrow. And then if you come to New Zealand, it's not a big place. Just stand in the main street and yell my name, and I'll come running. So yeah, I have really enjoyed this chat, and I always love chatting with you. It feels like we're kind of kindred AI spirits on the opposite side of the world.
Very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm just delighted to be a colleague of yours and learning from you along the way. And I can only imagine. Oh, good. Donnie dropped your website in there. And we'll just keep learning from each other, and everybody here will share it with all of you. whether you grab Mark's newsletter or check him out on LinkedIn or pay attention to what's happening on this show, whatever we have that we can tell you, we want to give you and tell you. It's just like we're waiting for anyone raises their hand a little bit. We are here for you. We want to help. We want to be part of your community. So please consider us in that way. Thanks again, Mark. Thank everybody for being here. And tomorrow, again, we're talking about annual planning and the use of generative AI. And we have some really good guests coming up this summer who are also going to talk with us about AI governance from different perspectives. So, so stay tuned. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you, Anne. I don't know if you can hear, but in the last 5 minutes, I've had 3 kids hit